Filming Incentives in India, Policy and Process by Shruti Rajkumar, VP Invest India, Head Film Facilitation Office. Please, Shruti, can we have you on the stage?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Um, I know presentations and policies and a long drawn thing doesn't sound quite exciting, but I'm going to keep it short and sweet. The crux of my presentation is essentially about how you can get incentives from the government for shooting your projects in India if you get a foreign filmmaker to come and collaborate with you. Key highlights, you can get up to 30 crores per project if you get a collaboration from a foreign filmmaker. The process is extremely simple. It takes about 20 days for us to give you approvals and another 60 to 90 days for you to get the money back. With those three key highlights, I'm going to just take you through what the incentives are as it stands right now. Not sure how many people are aware of the fact that there exists something called the Film Facilitation Office. We are a desk under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. And what we essentially do is when there's a project that comes in, a foreign film project, or even domestic shoots that you might have, if you need any support from the ministry in terms of how to navigate the entire system, how do I get permissions in a particular state, if there's railways you want to shoot with and you're not sure how to navigate that, or you're trying to get visas for someone, whatever support that you might need to do with filming in India, you reach out to the Film Facilitation Office desk and we'll support you with it every step of the way. Now, a big part of what we do is we provide incentives for filmmakers to come and film in India. And managing those incentives, giving out the funds, supporting you with, taking you through the process, the paperwork, all of that is also something that we do. So, like I mentioned, one is, of course, any permissions that you might need, any other requirements, like visas, etc., incentive management and disbursal, and then marketing and promotion of the event, of the incentive scheme is the third part, a pillar of the Film Facilitation Office. Now, the Film Facilitation Office, the incentives are split into two parts. So one is where you get a foreign film collaborator to come and film in India. So they're just primarily just putting in the money in a project. And part two of it could be what we call an official co-production, as we say. Very important thing for you to remember is in terms of what are the formats that are eligible for you to claim incentives. So it's feature films, which have to be minimum of 72 minutes in duration, commercial TV shows and series, web series, animation shows, all of these are eligible formats under the incentive scheme. The permission process for this is provided by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. So you put in the application to us, and we'll help you with the paperwork. We'll forward it to the ministry, get you all the approvals that you need. The fourth category, which is also eligible, are documentary films. There's a minimum duration limit for 30 minutes that's required for documentaries. The only difference here is the permitting authority for these becomes the Ministry of External Affairs, and the application has to be the nearest Indian mission. Again, if you're confused with this process, not clear how to do it, reach out to us, email us. We'll take you through all the steps from the start. So now that we've covered the type of formats, what is not eligible? The only one that I see which could be a little heartbreaking here would be reality shows, which are not eligible for incentives. The others, music shows typically, they don't end up applying for incentives, but ads unfortunately aren't available for incentives as it stands right now. We recently revised the guidelines in November of last year. So let's see, maybe there could be a change at some point, but as it stands, it's not there. Okay, now it looks like a lot of points to remember, but I want you to go home with just two very important points. One is you can get up to 40% back as rebates for your qualifying production expenditure in India. You can get, so how that 40% is split is 30% you get as a standard reimbursement. There's a bonus if you have 15% or more Indian labor, and there's an additional 5% if you have significant Indian content. If it's a live film shoot, there's a requisition for a minimum spend of 3 CR in India, which is what we call qualifying spends in the country. Now, the cap that I was talking about is currently at 30 crores per project. That's roughly $3.6 million that we offer per film. To give you a sense of what it was 2.5, it was roughly 20 million before, and we've had a 12-fold increase in less than a year. So that's how much the ministry is supporting, and we are serious about getting more foreign filmmakers in and really being a place where filmmakers want to come and film in India. Now, how we define significant Indian content is this. So there are 5 key categories that are important. Any one of these factors, if you are eligible for, then you can claim that additional 5%. Now, the easiest ones, right? If any of your lead characters, voiceover artists, anyone are Indian, you're eligible for 5%. Any of your creative heads of departments, are an Indian national, typically director, writer, could be a director. Any of those Indians, you're eligible for it. Shows the beauty of India, presents, shows India in a positive light. And more importantly, 25% of the total budget spent in India, you're automatically eligible for that additional 5%. So we have a special committee who sits, once you send us the script, we see, are you eligible for it or not? If you are, it's an easy, it's literally check, a checkbox in a application form is what you need to do. Now, so I used to be on the other side of things. I used to be a line producer. So majority of my career I've spent being a producer and a line producer. So policy and documents and all of these weren't my cup of tea when I joined. So I completely understand that when I send you a 70-page policy document to go through it, make sense of it, and then, try and navigate that whole system can be extremely overwhelming. And which is why this presentation exists the way it does, is for me to really simplify this for you, and also to give you a reassurance that it's not that difficult. The policy document, while it may not be a fun read, it's an easy read. Now, the steps involved are actually, we've simplified it greatly. 4 things for you to keep in mind. Who is the person who can apply for the incentives? So now, this is a situation where, let's say, you collaborate with a foreign filmmaker, you've met someone at a film festival, they say, hey, I'm interested in doing a project in India and I have X amount of money to spend. Help me navigate this. What do I do? The first thing for you to remember is the person who's going to apply for these incentives is going to be the Indian co-producer. So the person who applies and the person who gets the money is the Indian co-producer. You come on the FFO portal, you send us your script, we'll have a script evaluation officer who goes through it. Once you get the approval, you get your filming permission. So that's step 1, is before you start anything, you need a filming permission from the ministry. Step 2 is what we call an interim approval. Again, I don't want to kind of lose you in a lot of terms. An interim approval essentially is where you tell us, this is my likely spends going to be in India. So I'm likely to spend, let's say, 100 rupees in India. This is what my expenditure looks like. I'm going to spend X amount on talent. I'm going to spend X amount on locations. Like you would. So this is a document you would have created from the get-go at the time of pitching. So it's not an additional thing that you need to really put together. You tell us what your budget estimate is, what is your schedule, which are the places that you would like to shoot in. And the only reason we're asking you this is so that we can ask you if there is support that you need at any step of the way. Once you put in the interim application, what we do is we calculate and see, okay, basis this 100 rupees, what is the incentive amount that you're eligible to get? So while we say it's a maximum of 40% that you can get, we say, okay, of this 100 rupees, there are certain elements which are not eligible for incentives. For instance, travel is not an inclusion. So we'll take out the parts that are not eligible, and we'll say, okay, of the 100, you're likely to get 75. And we give you what is called an interim approval certificate. Once this interim approval certificate comes in, you're good to go. You have your shooting permission, you've got the certificate, you can go right ahead and shoot. You finish your entire shoot, and once that's done, within 90 days, you submit your documents. Now again, this is not something that you really need to work really hard to put together. You would have an audited, like a CA around, you will have your line production team, they would be already collecting all the bills. The only thing for you to keep in mind here is not too many cash payments, because anything that doesn't have a supporting bill, unfortunately, will not be eligible for incentives. So it's important for you to really follow the law of the land. Make sure you get all your GST certified bills, make sure you have proper agreements. That's really a hygiene check that you need to do, which is a requisition. So you put this in 90 days. Now, how do you get the money back? Again, a big question that I've heard from multiple people is, it's going to be a really cumbersome process, and I'm probably in this money, I'm not going to see the light of the day, right? It's just going to get lost in paperwork somewhere, and I'm going to be waiting for a few years. In reality, the scenario is 90% of your funds. So like I mentioned, right, of the 100 rupees that you're spending, if 75 of what you're eligible to, 90% of that you will get once you get all your documents in and we say, hey, this is good to go, you get that 90% of the funds right then and there. The remaining 10%, there's a requisite that you put in the Film Facilitation Office website logo, and you basically include the ministry logo and thank the Film Facilitation Office. It's literally 4 logos that you need to add right at the end, in the end credits of your film. Once you show us that, and you give us a sense of what the release looks like, who's your broadcast partner, all of those, you get the remaining 10% as well. To give you a sense of the timelines, right? This process of you putting in your documentation and getting the money, typically in other countries takes 1 year. How serious the ministry is about this policy is that we do this in 60 to 90 working days. In fact, the last film I processed personally was a record number of 33 days that we processed it in. Because again, the documentation was impeccable. There was absolutely no error that we could find. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that our timelines, like in every step of the way, it is unparalleled. Thailand, for instance, takes 60 working days to just give you an approval. This interim approval of the cost calculation takes 2 months, for instance. Greece takes 1 year for you to ever see the money. We do it in 20 and 60 days, to the extent that these timelines are very closely monitored by the ministry. So we make sure that we stick to those to the T, and we require for you also to stick to those timelines. There's a scenario too, where say if it's a documentary filmmaker film, or there's some content that might seem a little tricky in terms of from sensitivities, or could be an issue. Then we require it to be shown to the nearest NOC. Sorry, you need an NOC from the nearest Indian mission. My apologies. In which case, 20% gets disbursed on grant of final approval. 70% is once you get submission of the NOC, and then 10% is on once you get the final credit of the film. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but just remember the 90-10. Remember the fact that it's 60 to 90 days that we submitted, and then that's really the only 2 numbers that I want you to go home with. I'm going to skip the animation part, not necessarily relevant to everyone in this room, but just remember that even post-production is available for incentives. The only requisite here is that the minimum spend in India has to be 1 CR. You can get up to 35% back as incentives. So how the 35 is split is you can get 5% for significant Indian content. So imagine a project that's come in where you're only doing the post-production. That can be an application as well for a project. The cap remains the same, 30 CR, that doesn't change at all. The application process here is again the same thing. Your Indian producer, post-production partner puts it in the application. The best thing about here is you don't need any sort of prior approval. You can go directly to interim approval. You don't need because you finished shooting the film as well already. So the only thing you need is now the interim approval. So you tell us what your budget estimate is, what's your schedule, what does it look like. But it's really important for your contract to be finalized. Once that's done, again, the 90-day window holds true. Disbursal milestones remain the same, 90% once it's all approved, and 10% once you give us a final proof. Some common questions that come to us questions that come to us is, if I'm also shooting and I have post-production as well. Can it be two separate applications? The answer is no. It has to be one application per project. However, if in your project you want to include post-production as well, your cost can include everything in one application. Legally binding frank document is something that you cannot escape from. That's extremely important. And I'm not sure how many people in this room know, but a lot of Indian states offer incentives for filming as well. Some of them have robust film policies. And the truly unique thing about our incentive guidelines is the fact that it's stackable. So if you're, let's say, shooting in a Bhopal or an MP, and, Bhopal or Chhattisgarh or wherever you might be shooting, Jammu, in fact, has a great film policy. You can stack it up. So if you're shooting in Jammu, use the incentives and use ours. So it's 40% plus that. Now, it's truly unique and forward-thinking, our incentive guidelines, because no other country lets you do that. So they have regional incentives available, which you can't club with the federal incentives. But with ours, you can join the two. And in fact, if you have any challenges with navigating that whole state policy, the steps as well, we'll help you with that. Now is the second part. This could be, again, especially for the filmmakers, writers who attend a lot of film festivals. If you find a co-production partner, this could be, again, an option that you could explore. What essentially means, again, I'm just going to assume that you perhaps are not familiar with this, is, so India has 16 official bilateral co-production treaties with 16 countries. So these are UK, Australia, Italy, Canada, South Korea, and a bunch of others. But some of the key ones that you're likely to have a lot of projects with are these. If you're doing a project with any of these countries, then you can do, there is no, you don't have the whole concept of a minimum qualifying spend. You get 30% back as incentive. It still remains 30 crores per project. But the best part about doing a co-production project with India is the fact that you get an interim disbursal, which essentially means that, let's say you're telling me you're spending 100 rupees in India, and once you finish spending 50% of that, so you finish spending 50 rupees in India, you tell me that, hey, I'm done spending this amount. Now I want this money before my project is complete. So what we essentially do is 15% we give you back before your project is complete, which you can take right back and pump it back into your project, which can really ease your financial burden. Especially with animation projects, or if you're in a bit of a cash crunch, it's definitely something that would pad it up for you. All of this information is, of course, available on the Film Facilitation Office website as well. Very similar, Indian co-producer applies. You get a co-production status, is an official co-production certificate that you would require, which is provided by the Film Facilitation Office. Essentially, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting gives you that. For the other country, depending, if it's London, for instance, it's the British Film Institute who would provide that certificate to you. The minute you get your official co-production certificate, your contract is approved, you put in the application for your project, and like I mentioned, the 50% interim disbursal is something that's quite an exciting one for filmmakers. A lot of points to remember, but I'm just going to mention the key ones. Some common questions that come our way. Can an individual who is based abroad, maybe some family member who has money to spend, can they put in money in a project? The answer to that is no. It has to be a proper legitimate company, cannot be a letterbox company who can identify, can be a co-producer. We, of course, the point number 6 and 7 is, we'd love it if you can have all, BTS footage that we can use as marketing collateral, so there's nothing new there. And maximum co-producers who can be allowed for a project is, again, as per the treaty. I'm going to simplify that further for you. Now, each treaty has separate guidelines available in it. Typically, the split is that it's an 80-20 split. So which means they say that maximum contribution from a producer cannot exceed 80%, and minimum contribution cannot be lesser than 20%. I know it seems like it a little complicated, but when you come to that stage where you're in conversation with a filmmaker and it's an official co-production, reach out to us and we'll take you through this entire process once again. So, you don't have to kind of be too worried with the details at this stage. Just to give you the filming incentives by states, MP has a fantastic film policy, Uttarakhand has a fantastic film policy, Jammu, I know Rajasthan also, and Haryana, all of these states, except for Gujarat, they don't let, only Gujarat doesn't allow you to combine it with the federal incentives, but all the others allow you to club it, and this is the maximum amount that they offer as incentives, and it's likely that the entire process of submitting documentation, all of that is going to be quite similar. That's it from us. I promise to keep it short. But do reach out to us. Do spread the word. We'd love to have more collaborations coming in from filmmakers. Do let all your writer friends, all your producer friends, everyone know about the fact that this exists. I know a lot of filmmakers are still not aware of the incentive policy. If there's any questions that you might have regarding this, I'm around, happy to answer any questions, and also can do one-on-one sessions with you, just take you through the policy. So we are available also, throughout your, from start to finish. Thank you so much. Anyone have any questions that you'd like? Yeah. Sure. Yes, I could share the presentation with you, but I would urge you to go through the guidelines. Like I mentioned, it's a 71-page easy read. But I will try and simplify this for you, and I'll share the presentation with you as well. But it's important that you understand the nuances of the guidelines. If you have a CA, give it to him. Make it his job to do. You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any help
For search and recce, if there's a specific location that you want support with, for instance, that we can help you, support you with. We can reach out to the nodal officer in the specific states and we can support you with that. Yes. Yes, of course. This entire policy is available for all filmmakers. The only important part is that the money needs to, essentially, it has to be a foreign filmmaker pumping in money in India. Just to give you a sense of why this policy was created, right, for foreign film, for funds to come from outside of India into India. So, FIRC is, a foreign inward remittance certificate is an important part. And the second is the fact that we have fantastic talent here. Whether it's animation, writing, just the locations that we have in every way. We really want, India to be on the global stage, and we want more foreign filmmakers to be aware of the fact that, please come and shoot in India. And which is why this whole incentive policy exists the way it does, and we're trying to make it lucrative, because now, we finally have a seat at the table. If you're bringing 30 crores, 3.6 million into a project, it gives you the option to now negotiate credits. It allows you to negotiate better territories for yourself. Negotiate, better, rights for yourself in every way. And that's really the objective, is to give you power and let them know that, listen, we're in this in a serious manner. We want more participation from filmmakers outside.
So this policy apply to the Hindi content also, like foreign filmmakers want to make Hindi?
Absolutely. All content. Regional content is all applicable. Language doesn't matter. Important thing is the FIRC. That has to come in. And also there's no limitation on number of applications that a filmmaker can put in. Your company can put in multiple projects. It's first come, first serve. There's budget allocated for the year for the policy, which is a significant chunk. It's 150 crores. It's going to be a tough one to finish off using the entire amount. So don't worry about any of those things. Just focus on getting that project and getting the contract. But we'd love for you to just spread the word about it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Shruti, you will have to stay back just a moment.